Okay, very good. And maybe I'll do it after the flag. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead and get started? This is the meeting of the Planning Commission of September 3rd. And to begin with, first item on the agenda is the flag salute, and that's going to be led by Commissioner Savage.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I wanted everyone to know that we do have translation service tonight, so if you need translation to Spanish, please talk to Maribel, and Maribel is where? She's in the lobby, or you can come up and see Esmeralda here if you need that particular service. Okay, next item on the agenda is roll call.
Thank you. Chair Grimm,
Here.
Vice Chair Looney, absent. Commissioner De Jesus. Here. Commissioner Hastings.
Here.
Commissioner McCarthy, absent. Commissioner Savage.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Student Commissioner Basso. Student Commissioner Lieberman. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If there's any changes, please bring those up. If not, I would entertain a motion. Commissioner De Jesus,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hastings. Please vote and lock in. And it passes unanimously. Okay, next item is changes to the agenda. I would ask staff if there's any changes to tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Chairman Gray. No changes tonight. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on then to oral communications. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on matters that are not on the agenda. If you do need to speak on something, now's the time to come forward. You will have to fill out and complete a speaker slip, and you can turn that in to Esmeralda on the end of the dais. Okay, next item, we go into public hearings. And the first item on the agenda, first thing I need to do is, for those of you that don't know, explain the public hearing process. It's a fairly simple process. The first thing that happens is staff will give a presentation on the item that's before us tonight. In this case, I don't think there's an applicant, so we will not have an applicant presentation. The commission can then ask questions of that staff report, and from that point, we open the public hearing and take testimony from the public, after which the hearing is closed and it'll go back to the Planning Commission for discussion and an action. So the first item on tonight's agenda is an amendment to the code, item PH1 P24 0254. And if we could have a staff report, please.
Good evening, Chairman Grimm, Commissioners. Patsy Chum, the Assistant Director of Community Development Department. I am actually going to remain sitting at this point because moving back and forth is going to provide to be a challenge here tonight. We have a lot on the agenda, so if you indulge me, I'm just going to sit put right here. Thank you so much. So starting with this item, this public hearing item, what we have here before you tonight is a consideration regarding Program 8, which is one of the programs in our adopted housing element, our sixth cycle housing element, which covers the years of 2021 to 2029. It was adopted by City Council. It was certified by State Housing Community Development Department on September 7th, 2022. In that housing element, there is what's called a housing plan, which basically identifies all the city's housing goals, our policies, and also implementing programs. There are a total of 27 housing programs that actually need to be implemented, as we call them out in the housing element. They all have different objectives, different timeframes, and expectations as to when they need to happen and be implemented. One of these programs is Program 8, which is basically identifying sites that were used in prior planning periods' housing elements. And what that does is that it allows us, the City of Vista, to help meet our RHNA numbers, which is basically our Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers, and what's expected of the city within that time frame of 8 years from 2021, 2029, as far as making sure that we have enough sites to accommodate the housing that we're expected to produce. So that's Program 8. So as part of Program 8, the city, City of Vista, we can only count the non-vacant sites that were included in one previous housing element inventory and vacant sites that were included in 2 prior housing elements. If, in fact, the subject sites, they are going to be subject to a rezoning program that allows us to, and the developers to build affordable housing development by right. What that means is that they don't go through a discretionary action, they don't go through the planning commission, they don't go through the city council, they basically go through a plan check, and they go straight to building permit. So that's the whole point of making sure that it's expedited, that it's fast, and we're producing the housing that we need to on those particular sites that we identify that can help us meet our RHNA numbers. But in order to do that, we have to amend our development code. And amending our development code, we're going to be able to then permit this by right approval of these particular sites or projects on these sites, as we are required by state law for eligible housing development projects. And then that way, we're making sure, we're ensuring then compliance with our housing element as it was adopted, certified by HCD. So on this map, it's basically identifying the non-vacant sites that are included in one previous housing element inventory. I know the map is, it's our entire city, so it's very hard to see all the different sites, but what needs to be kind of noted on this picture or on this map is that basically the sites are concentrated in our downtown area. So that's part of our downtown, mostly our downtown specific planning area, where the non-vacant sites that got included in one previous housing element inventory. And again, we can count those and count towards RHNA as long as there is a rezoning program allowing the affordable housing development by right, which is basically the subject of tonight's request in this hearing. The next map is the vacant sites that got included in 2 previous housing elements, so all the green sites that are scattered throughout the city. Same idea is that if somebody comes forward, a developer proposing a project on these sites, then also development by right as far as a rezoning program that allows for that to happen. So that's the other map that I just wanted to indicate that. And as part of the Program 8, what the expectations are from the state is that at least 20% of the total number of housing units that are built in the project, they have to be proposed at lower income households. What that means is we're talking 80% of the area medium income, for the area for San Diego County, and whether it's an affordable rent or affordable housing cost as applicable, that's what the expectation is. So obviously, if somebody's going to come in at 100% affordable housing project, even better. I mean, but the minimum requirement is 20% to be able to be eligible for this by right approval process. So how it happens is that the applicant will have to participate in a pre-application meeting review with the city through multidisciplinary reviewers. Just like normally they do, it's like a courtesy meeting that we process here at the city. Then we can kind of tell them and they can understand what the issues that are anticipated on their project before they actually put the construction documents together. And then after that, they go through what's called the zoning clearance application. The zoning clearance application will be reviewed by the community development director or designee in order to make sure that conformance is being met with the objective design standards, with our general plan, applicable specific plan, zoning code, et cetera, et cetera. So everything gets checked through that zoning clearance process after they go through the pre-application process. So the community development director or designee will then ministerially review the zoning clearance, and if the application meets all of the applicable standards, requirements, et cetera, They're on their way. They're going to be submitting for construction documents, go through the plan check process without any public hearing. Again, no planning commission, no zoning administrator, no city council. And again, the whole point of this is for fast housing production, right? This is the goal. We're having to meet our RENA numbers, and the only way to do that is to help make it go speedy. But we're also going to have a regulatory agreement in place so that we know that these units are going to be affordable actually almost in perpetuity here. We're talking 45 years for privately financed projects, 55 years for publicly financed projects. And this mimics the same idea that we have now with density bonus projects. We're trying to keep this consistent with how we already do it. So we are not remembering like, okay, is this 55 years? Is this 45? Is it 40? Is it 30? What have you. So we're trying to keep it consistent with our density bonus, and this is where the regulatory comes in place, handy to make sure that we're all thinking the same thing here. And with that, the recommendation from staff is that Planning Commission recommends City Council approve of this ordinance that's basically adding a chapter in our code, which is Chapter 18.98, and it talks specifically by right approval so that we can comply with our housing element as it was adopted by State HCD back in 2022. The next steps after tonight, assuming that it gets approved and recommended for approval, we're going to go to City Council September 24th. They will make the final decision and then adopt the ordinance, and then we'll be, at that point, submitting the approved, adopted ordinance to State HCD, showing compliance with Program 8 implementation, and there should be a check mark that we can check the box and make sure that we're meeting all the requirements that's expected of us. And this pretty much concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions at this point. Thank you very much.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any mandated timeframes for planning staff to complete that zoning clearance review?
As far as I know from state government code, and Ms. Guy can actually interject here if she has any other information on that I have read, not specifically, but we still have the, as far as the expectations on 30 days turnaround. I mean, we have our plan check turnaround time, which is typically 2 weeks, or 15, 17 days on the first go round. But as far as a view from state looking down on us and saying you must by the certain day, I have not come across any deadline. Amanda, do you have anything on that?
So Patsy is correct that there is no state law mandated timeline, and this is ministerial, so it's not subject to the Permit Streamlining Act either.
Thank you.
Commissioner DeJesus?
Thank you so much, Patsy. That was great, but I want to make sure I can wrap my mind around it. So this Program 8 is a move from public review to ministerial review of projects in areas that are earmarked for this type of development. And I saw the map, but is that map somewhere, see a lot of it's in downtown, but how was that identified, number one? Number two, when we go from public review to ministerial review and it's not subject to the permit timelines, how does the public know about projects that are coming forward?
So great questions. The first one is how it's identified, if I understood your question correctly, Commissioner DeJesus, is we're going to identify these sites on a map on our GIS. So it'll be web-based, the members of the public, developers, et cetera. Right now, it's in work progress, and it's going to be a layer in our zoning map. So they'll be able to click and say, okay, identified previously, vacant, non-vacant, eligible for this by right approval. So we're definitely going to have that, and that's in the kind of final works to getting that uploaded after obviously approved by council and everything goes that way. But the other way, your question about how does the public know about it, because there's no public hearing, so there's no notices out there. We haven't gone that far thinking about that, but one thing that we could do perhaps is have it on our interactive map on our website, because even though we mostly put public hearing projects there that have, are going to go to the Planning Commission or City Council, we can also identify these projects. And I think it'll be a long way, to prove that, hey, this is kind of out there and be aware of it.
Thank you. And that's to the point I was thinking of is on the website, there's this great portion of the map where development's happening, telling about projects, and people that may be looking for housing can look on there. So it'd be a nice addition to that if we had a subcategory. Would be, when the time comes, I'd love to know more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely create a layer on that and specifically so that it's more, it's clear right off the bat that these are the sites on the interactive map.
And one other question, is this something that the state's requiring that local governments do for, so every city in the state of California incorporated has this task to identify property for this to happen and become ministerial?
Well, just take a little step back, is that for RENA purposes, we identified sites, and we could have not utilized these previous sites that have utilized in prior review cycles, but I think most jurisdictions do that, and I think because there's state law out there that addresses that, and most cities will take advantage of that ability to do that, that's when the by right approval comes in, because obviously they want to make sure and ensure that we're actually keeping up with that promise, not just, saying we're going to do it, but obviously we have to adopt something in our code to make that happen.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot for the entire state, by the way, but thank you so much for the answer.
No problem.
Any questions from the student commissioners? Very, very good, thank you. We're now ready to open the public hearing up. I have not received any speaker slips, so if you want to speak, you can come down, but you'll still have to fill out a speaker slip and give it to Esmeralda. Any speakers? If not, we'll close the public hearing and we'll turn it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Commissioner DeJesus.
Since we're all so chatty about it and there's no public review, then I'm just going to make a motion to adopt resolution. Are we looking for a motion, by the way?
We can, yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
adopt resolution 2024, recommending city council approval of an ordinance adding chapter 18.98 to the Vista Development Code regarding the by right approval to ensure compliance with the adopted sixth cycle housing element 2021 through 2029.
Do I have a second, Commissioner Savage?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second that, okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please cast your votes, please. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next on the agenda is discussion items. We have two, and on these discussion items, I will actually turn them over to staff to get started on a staff report.
Thank you very much, Chair Grimm and members of the Planning Commission. So we're excited tonight to start the environmental impact report process for our general plan update for the Vista 2050 general plan. And I'm going to turn it over to our consultant with Rick, Ms. Brooke Peterson.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. The consultant team and your staff have been pretty hard at work over the last year and a half, so we're excited to be able to share with you where we've been, where we're at today, and where we're going. So I just want to provide a brief overview. Before I do that, I just want to orient you to your team. So I serve as the project manager for the consultant team. I'm supported by my assistant project manager, Sydney Rankmore. Carrie Fernandes, who will be presenting to you tonight, leads the EIR process from DUDEC. And then Monique Chen will also be presenting to you tonight, and she's leading the mobility tasks on behalf of CRA. Your city staff team is led by Joe Vaca as your community development director, supported by Michael Resler, your city planner, who's also the project manager for the update, and then Patsy Chow provides her oversight. So with that, I first want to kind of orient you to where we started. At the outset of the process, based both on the initial community outreach series, as well as direction received from council, we identified some clear priorities to inform and guide the development of the process and the plan update itself. Your existing current adopted plan has a lot of very strong policy and set forth a very strong framework for us to work from. So we are doing not a complete wholesale update, but we are doing targeted updates both from a land use as well as a goals and policies standpoint. A clear priority was accommodating the growth that we are projecting in key targeted areas, and that being in your downtown core and kind of key nodes, as well as along your commercial corridors, many of which have a lot of underutilized commercial areas. So we really have been taking a close look at that. Key to the update is providing for more housing, and not just regular housing, but affordable housing in particular. As we go through the development of the land use plan, the alternatives, and then particularly the goals and policies, the mobility network, we want to ensure, and we heard very strongly from council and from the public, that we want to make sure that that all works together to better support multimodal travel in terms of bike and pedestrian opportunities. It's going to be very critical through the update for us to reflect the diversity that exists in Vista, and that's culturally, demographically, across all levels, to better create equitable access to everything here in Vista. And the last but not least, there's been a lot of legislative changes that require changes to the plan that have occurred since your 2012 plan was adopted. So where have we been? We kicked off in June of 2022. We spent essentially much of that first year preparing the existing conditions analysis, which really looked at what's on the ground today, what's happening today, what conditions have changed since your current plan was adopted. We then launched the public outreach in January of 2023. And we conducted the first workshop series, which was really focused on visioning and presented kind of the key finding as the opportunities constraints. We then spent much time preparing the land use alternatives and presented those to both the public at a workshop series in January, February, and then an update here just last May. And at that council update in May, the council selected from two alternatives, selected the preferred land use plan. So this rather complex chart, the main purpose is to just show you, if I can get this to work, yes. So we've, like I mentioned, we kind of launched the project, established the vision, and then have spent a good portion of the time preparing the plan and developing the goals and policies. So this is really where we are today. We're in the process of preparing the document. So we are preparing the general plan document and all its elements, except for the housing element. And one of the key purposes for tonight is to start the preparation of the environmental impact report. So just a note on community outreach. Your staff have been extremely committed to outreach throughout the entire process. As I mentioned, there's been 2 workshop series. Those workshops are held, we hold 4 workshops, 1 in each council district with the same program. One of them is conducted all in Spanish, the rest are conducted in English with translation provided. And we've done that at the 2 main key junctures of the project. And then you can see here just the numbers. There's been extensive outreach notification done to really try and cast as wide a net and invite as much participation in this update as possible. So the general plan land use plan, the preferred land use plan, is organized around 5 categories: residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial, and then civic parks and recreation parks and open space, excuse me. All of these categories then have additional designations that further detail the densities and intensities intended to occur in those. In this update, we are proposing changes in terms of the designation development densities and intensities only to the mixed use category. No changes have been made to the residential, commercial, industrial, or civic designations. And those changes to the mixed-use designations, we have created 2 new designations. Previously, there was only 1 mixed-use designation in the city. We're proposing 2. The mixed-use corridor provides for up to 4 stories of development at 45 dwelling units to an acre, and is intended to facilitate development of as I mentioned, those underutilized commercial areas along your corridors. And there are extensive underutilized properties, and so this new designation really is intended to better facilitate and incentivize redevelopment of those areas. There's a greater emphasis in that kind of density and intensity, allows for a better emphasis on bike and pedestrian opportunities. The mixed-use general increases the maximum development up to 80 dwelling units to an acre, and that is intended really for your downtown area and key nodes further as you go south along South Santa Fe and some other very targeted key nodes. It would allow for up to 5 stories of development, and again is intended to facilitate redevelopment at larger scales and really allows for greater activation of the public realm and greater use of the bike and pedestrian amenities and networks, as well as better support transit. And with the Sprinter, there's an incredible transit backbone that goes through the city, and we want to better leverage that. So this is the preferred land use plan. I'm just going to highlight, as I mentioned, we're really proposing development in the downtown area and along South Santa Fe and at key nodes. This is the mixed-use general designation, and then you will see that lighter purple are where we are proposing the mixed-use corridor, kind of out West Vista Way up to Beaubier and these other key corridors. I'm going to show you the next map. This looks a little bit different, but it just highlights those areas of change that I've just noted. So the general plan, along with the general plan as part of the EIR process, every general plan update is required to prepare what we call a build-out analysis. The build-out are used to determine the development impacts as part of the CEQA review associated with the land use changes, both the plan and the goals and policies associated with the proposed project. They measure population density, number of dwelling units, anticipated employment, and together they forecast the projected impacts of the plan update. It's important to note that while these are estimates and they forecast the build-out, this is a maximum build-out, and it is not intended that this full amount of build-out would actually occur based on either zoning or site constraints or other market conditions. So the preferred plan build-out projects 52,369 dwelling units, 61,927 jobs, and an overall population of 151,354, which is about a 40,000 population increase. So with that, I just want to note next steps. As I mentioned, we are initiating the scoping for the environmental review process through the environmental impact report. We are preparing the draft plan as we speak. And after that, based on public review of both of those documents, we would then come back before you for recommendation to City Council of adoption of the plan. So with that, I am going to step aside. I'm going to invite Carrie Fernandez with DUDEC to come up, and we are going to begin the NOP scoping portion of tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. My name is Carrie Fernandez. I am a principal at DUDEC, which is just 10 miles southwest from here, and I manage our CEQA NEPA group. So looking forward to presenting the NOP, and which is Notice of Preparation. I know we have a lot of acronyms in CEQA, which... So the purpose of the scoping meeting is to obtain feedback from both the Commission and also from the public related specifically to the environmental concerns that could be raised as part of not just the adoption of the plan, but also the implementation of the plan. So today I'll be going through, I won't repeat some of the things that Brooke said, but as it relates to the environmental review process, I'll go through those. So as Brooke mentioned, and you know, the city's general plan is on the entire city, and it also included areas outside of the city limits in the sphere of influence. And so there were areas that were considered that might be considered to be brought into the city. And so that the map here shows the colors are your general plan land use map, and then the gray are the sphere of influence area. So, and the general plan EIR will look at the entire city, all the changes that are being proposed, both regulatory changes, zoning changes, and then again, the implementation of those as it relates to plan adoption. So what we'll be looking at as the project description is the entire general plan update. It will be the plan, including the goals and policies, and the EIR will look at updating the existing conditions, updating the planning horizon to 2050, covering off on the recent legislation that Brooke mentioned, revisions to the land use and community identity element, revisions to the public safety facilities and services element, incorporating environmental justice goals and policies per state law, refining and updating the circulation element, which you'll hear later tonight from CRA and the mobility workshop, and then refining and updating the remaining elements. So the EIR will cover off on all of those things. So the purpose of the the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, is to inform the public and decision makers about what the project is and what the potential impacts are. And it's to provide an opportunity for the public and affected agencies to comment on the environmental issues. And you know, part of our obligation too is to look at feasible ways to avoid or reduce impacts, and also to find alternatives, some of which you heard that as part of this planning process, alternatives were already considered, and those will be discussed as those that have the evolution of what alternatives. And then we will also identify alternatives that reduce or avoid impacts. And then if there are any significant and unavoidable impacts, those will also be disclosed. So where we are today, we're basically number one. So this is the very beginning of the CEQA process. So after today, we receive the comments at the end of public review, which is a 30-day public review. From that point, we will consider and ensure that every comment that is received related to environmental concerns is incorporated and considered as part of the preparation of the EIR. Once it's complete and goes through city staff review, it will go out for public review to all interested parties for 45 days. At the end of the 45 days, we will respond to each and every individual comment received. And at that point, a final EIR, all the comments, responses, and any edits will come back to this body for recommendation for approval to the City Council. So these are all of the issues that will be studied in the EIR. And with a city such as Vista, you really do hit all the things. You've got mineral resources, you've got agricultural resources, and then again, we'll be looking at not just what the land use changes, what they propose, but also what some of the policies and regulations might have, residual effects that will be considered. And the NOP went out on August 20th. It ends September 19th at 5 p.m., so a few more weeks for folks to get in their comments. Right now, we're looking at winter 2025, so beginning of the year, next year, and shooting to get back to Planning Commission in spring of 2025, and with final approvals also in the spring of 2025. So how to submit comments. So obviously there will be public comment this evening from the public who is interested and fills out a speaker card. There are also comment forms out in the lobby, and you can scan this QR code if you'd like to provide comments on the website. You can also send them via mail, traditional mail, and then you can email them to Michael Ressler at the email address provided. Okay, so that concludes the scoping portion of my presentation. However, I believe now we open it up for public comment.
Okay, open up for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak, please come forward. And as I said, you will need to fill out a slip. If no one wishes to speak, was there any questions or, oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Conrad. Last name is Pawelski. I live at 1712 Sunrise Drive, Vista. Resident here almost all my life, 66 years. I'm looking at the general plan update. How is the draft EIR and ER going to be changed with the new legislation the state of California has to go through? If it's public projects and public infrastructure is needed, it's exempt from CEQA. Is this going to have some of that impact on this, where it doesn't go through the same review criteria it used to? Second of all, some of the stuff we had in the scoping sessions that I went to, the 2 different series of those, we had stuff that's outside the sphere of influence. We're looking at a land use document for the city of Vista. You don't have a designated land use authority for stuff in a county. I know it may be a sphere of influence, but if you don't have land use authority, how can we go through and implement that in a DIR or in the final document if it's approved? I'm glad we're going through this. These are important documents to go through and look at the future of Vista. And I see we have quite a bit of density already. You've got a number of jobs up there, more than the units. I see here for the proposed growth. What's your estimates? Because, economies go up and down in the next 20 years. Sure can have a significant impact whether it meets it. But we got to set some in there. I will plan on writing some comments and submitting those. And I'm not sure if you have any answers to my question about the EIR process and what the state of California has changed on that recently. Other than that, I'm available to talk about it and appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments. Would staff like to address his questions, please?
We'll be analyzing that as part of the EIR, and we have to address the overall general plan update and any potential impacts that would create.
And just on the question of as a land use guidance document, we'll analyze all the impacts of that. If projects come forward that are outside, that are either not considered projects under CEQA or are projects that are eligible for a categorical exemption, though the city can, if they're public projects, can pursue that. However, this will not allow every project coming forward by right. It just provides the overall analysis of the general plan update and policies.
Thank you. Any questions from the Planning Commission to this point? Commissioner DeJesus.
First, I'd just like to thank staff and the consulting company. This is a lot of information. I was at a couple of the events that you held, and just fantastic. It's so much information. I mean, I'm sure the audience and even myself were kind of like, our heads are spinning a little bit. But I did pull some questions out. And this is so general, but the EIR that we're talking about, is it for the entire city or what's been newly identified as rezoned for greater density? And is the EIR part of, under the umbrella of the general plan? It's not the general plan. Those are the two things that, the question of the being umbrella, it's just a yes or no. And the EIR for the entire city, or are we just doing the EIR for what's been identified for rezoning?
No, it'll cover the entire city and all of the elements in the general plan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
Thank you. One of the slides Ms. Peterson showed was a comparison of the 2030 plan versus the upcoming 2050 plan. And one of the things that really jumped out at me, considering that there's really no change to the intensities of our commercial and industrial designations, is a significant decrease in the job numbers. So is there something that would explain that?
Yes. So along the commercial corridors, a lot of the area that is being changed to a mixed-use corridor is currently underutilized vacant commercial. And so by plan and by paper, it shows more jobs and more potential revenue that is not actualized or realized. And without having redevelopment, when state law had taken redevelopment away from cities, we don't have a tool to have properties redeveloped. So by changing the zoning to mixed use to allow residential, we think it's better for the community. We need the housing. They can still do some commercial, but it wouldn't result in the same amount of revenue and/or jobs that's on paper today. And then just one other quick note is that we're oversaturated with commercial throughout the city. We have way more commercially zoned property than would be normally accommodated by the regular commercial market.
Yeah, I was just going to note that, and just to add, in the preparation of the land use alternatives, when we presented them to council, it also included a fiscal impact analysis, which looked precisely at how the existing plan designations and how that affected the fiscal resources of the city, what that generated, and how it impacted the revenues, compared with each of the two alternatives. And it, as Director Vaca noted, it showed a very extreme saturation of commercial. It was about 4 or 5 times higher than the county average square feet of commercial per citizen. So we are trying to basically bring it back into market realities with this plan.
Just as a follow-up on there, if we have too much commercial now, we are driving towards more density in the future. Does that balance that out, or we still need to lose some of our commercial?
So we anticipate that it will balance it out. We think that by having more heads and beds, it'll actually help retail throughout the community, and it'll be at a more appropriate level.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Other questions? If not, did you want to move forward with the mobility?
Yes, we would. Thank you.
Very good.
With that, I'm going to introduce Monique, who's leading the mobility portion from CRA, and she's going to go over kind of an introduction to mobility before we head into our workshop.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before I get started, I just want to share my appreciation and excitement to see all the young faces in this room. And I hope the mobility discussion, you guys find it interesting. If I can recruit a future planner or future transportation engineer, you know, that is greatly appreciated. I'm very impressed by the group here. So with that, I will get started with the mobility element. I am Monique Chen. I'm a principal at CR Associates. And first, what is a mobility element? It is a required element in the general plan, and it's really to build a vision and this transportation system for the next 20 to 25 years for the city. A transportation system that accommodates for all modes of travel, whether you walk, you bike, you ride transit, or you drive. And it is also a transportation system that accommodates all users, whether you're residents, you're employees, you're business owners, or visitors. So it is a very important foundational long-range planning emphasis and framework for transportation. And another thing of this mobility element update is to really keep up with the state mandates, the regulations, the policies. The 3 that you see here that I'm going to highlight, the first one is the SB 375, that's Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act. The next one is AB 1358, and that is the Complete Streets Act, which enforced about 13 years ago that changed our mobility planning processes. And this act required all agencies plan for all users of the road. I mentioned whether you walk, bike, drive, or take transit, or you're senior, your children, or you're disabled. And then lastly is one that changes CEQA that Carrie mentioned. For in the past, in SB 743, our transportation impacts when it comes to CEQA is a thing called levels of service. You know, level of service A, B, C, D, E, F, E and F considered as bad, right? And then now with SB 743, the new matrix for CEQA impact come to transportation is called vehicle miles traveled. So what this does is to say how efficient a trip is, whether it's for employees, how far you travel to your job, for residents, how far you travel to or from your job, right? So it is very much so an efficiency, sustainable-based metrics for transportation impacts. And some of the priorities that we really are trying to follow, one is set the vision for Vista's transportation system. And we also want to create networks and improvements that are in concert with the land use element that Brooke was talking about. And the networks needs to be developed to accommodate for future growth. And lastly, is to set up the goals and policies to promote efficient and safe travel. Brooke mentioned the extensive community engagement this project has gone through. And some of the main takeaways that we heard is safety. You hear safety talking about pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, improve the safety of pedestrian travel, and improve safety measures, traffic calming, slow down traffic speed, looking at signal signage improvements. And then another thing we want to also look at is, yes, we're doing all the complete streets multimodal planning, but we still want to be able to move traffic around. So how do we address potential traffic congestion and giving people the access to transit, our bus and Sprinter systems, and lastly, provide adequate parking for the demands. So quickly, and these networks I'm about to present are in draft form, so we're here to gather inputs and comments both from the group here and then later on when we're outside and taking additional comments. So the first network you're seeing here is called the pedestrian route type. And this, I'm going to present 3 different things: the district type, the corridor type, and the connector type. First, the district type, as you can see here, I guess I can't get it to work. The red color on the map, and that's the district type that focuses in downtown area near the Vista Transit Station. And so this is the area where we anticipate most pedestrian activities. And we're looking at having the facilities to support transit users, to support people that go to restaurants, enjoy the downtown environment, to support high-density residential senior housing. And then the blue you see here are the corridor types. And you can see they're pretty much aligned with the land use map that Brooke shared earlier, and that is on the future mixed-use corridors that provides shopping opportunities that are maybe near or adjacent to schools or parks. And then lastly is the green color on the map, and that is the connectors. And so that is really providing the conduit between the residential neighborhood and the corridors or the districts that we're talking about. And so I start with the connectors, and that's your typical sidewalk. You have the ADA curb ramps that are highlighted in yellow, and then the lines you see, those are the high visibility crosswalks and the advanced limit line, meaning the cars will stop well advanced the sidewalk, or the crosswalk, sorry. And the next level, next tier up is the corridor, and it's built on the connector themes and theories, and then but we're adding, pedestrian scale lighting, potentially pedestrian countdown signals, and then a treatment called LPI, lead pedestrian intervals. I don't know if you've seen those before, which means when the signal turns still red and you see the pedestrian hand become green, allow pedestrians to enter the intersection, the crosswalk, so drivers can be more aware that there are people crossing. So that's the pedestrian lead interval. And lastly is the district, which is near the Vista Transit Center in downtown. And the districts are asking or requiring wider sidewalks and maybe dual curb ramps for ADA compliance. And you see street furnitures, and you see bulb outs at intersections to shorten pedestrian crossing. And in addition to the high visibility crosswalk, the city will have the option to put a decorative crosswalk. And these decorative crosswalks can even be designed by our talented students here. And the next network I'm going to get into is the bicycle network. As you can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of facilities. One Class 1 that is a multi-use path, and pretty much completion the inline rail trail. And then we have the typical bike lanes, that's the 5-foot bicycle lanes, and that's designated and adjacent to travel lanes or on-street parking. The next two are both called Class 3s. One is bike route, another one is bicycle boulevard. And bike route are those you see on the streets that, you see a pavement marking, cyclists are sharing the same space with vehicles. And the bicycle boulevard is really an upgrade treatments to a bike route, which means you have traffic coming both vertically, whether it's a traffic circle, whether it's signage, whether it's raised median, whether it's speed humps, speed bumps, speed cushions, or horizontally. That means narrower travel lanes. You may see some bow-bows or they call them chokers to slow down, make the drivers feel the streets are narrower, so they will drive slower. And the last one is Class 4 called the separated bikeways, and some people refer them as cycle tracks. So these are the bike lanes that's being physically separated, and the treatment can be a raised island, it can be planters, it can be flag posts, and a lot of times, or not a lot of times, sometimes they're adjacent to parked vehicles to further increase that separation. And here are just some quick typicals of what each one of the facility types could look like. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but one of the things I do want to point out is that Class 1 bike path or multi-use path is 100% right-of-way separated from the moving vehicles. It is not a trail, it's not a recreational trail, it's usually paved surface at a minimum 8 feet and then 2 feet of shoulder on each side, so 12 feet in width. And the next one you see is the Class 2 bike lane, and you see a whole lot of that in the city right now. And then the next one is the Class 3 bike route. And then lastly is the cycle track or separated bikeways. So with the planned network, the proposed planned network, and we did a mileage comparison. And as you can see on this table, we're increasing the Class 1 multi-use path. Like I said, that's mainly the completion of the inline rail trail. And then we see a decrease in Class 2, and that is because there are quite a few buffered bike lanes out there right now. Our plan is to convert those into a Class 4, and that is a separated bikeway, which the city doesn't have any right now, but when the plan's implemented, you will see over 20 lane miles of separated bicycle facility. And the next network is the transit network. And, city is not a transit planning agency, so as part of the planning process, we reach out to SANDAG and NCTD and receive their input and also some of the regional long-range plans from SANDAG. The first thing I want to highlight is double tracking of the Sprinter line. And the City Vista, most of the City Vista, the Sprinter line is already double tracked. The only thing that you can see is kind of on the north end, northwestern end with the yellow band. And that's the section that the NCTD and SANDAG are planning on double tracking. Another exciting vision that SANDAG and NCTD have is to grade separate the tracks where, a train is coming through at grade and facing with vehicles and pedestrians and other travel mode alike. So the goal is to either elevate or under trenching some of the tracks. And one of the things I know the city is starting a study for within CTD is looking at potential grade SEP for Vista Village Drive near Santa Fe, near the Vista Transit Station. Another one that SANDAG is looking at is the Next Gen Rapid, which is the purple that you see on this map, mainly along Melrose Drive and part of the Santa Fe Avenue. And that is really, there are potential treatments on increase or improve transit priority. It could come in the form of transit-only lanes. It could come in the form of transit priority signal treatments. And so that is still sort of in the long-range planning as the city and Sandag and CTD move forward. We'll have more information and treatments to share along these two corridors. The local buses, one of the things, the routes are very similar to what it is out there today, but one of the things that NCTD is planning on doing is increasing the frequency, meaning they will come more often. And lastly is a pair that is a circulator linked in with micro-transit areas and then transportation investment areas. The plan is to provide a shuttle service as you can see in the bright blue, in both sort of the overlapping microtransit area as well as the transit investment area. Sandag used to call that the mobility hubs area. Lastly is the planned roadway classification. We kept most of the classification categories as it is today in the current general plan circulation element. You see the prime arterial, that's largely Melrose and Sycamore, and then the urban major arterial that is more close to the denser areas, then the major arterial, and then the complete streets in the city that are cities implementing Santa Fe and Civic Center Drive, and then Townsite. And then the collectors, that's the feeders that are collecting traffic from neighborhood. And lastly, the semi-rural collectors. With that, I close my presentation and then welcome any questions that you may have.
Very good, thank you. Let's open it up to the public first. Any questions from the public regarding that presentation? Any questions from the Planning Commission? If not,
so this kind of concludes the formal meeting portion of this evening. We want to allow for any additional commissioner comments, questions, et cetera. And otherwise, for the public comment portion for the mobility topic that is presented, we want to kind of close this portion of the meeting and invite everyone out to the foyer where we have all of the information that Monique shared on boards and additional opportunities for input, along with a lot of staff to be there to provide one-on-one conversations and questions and answers.
okay. I guess the question would be, do you want us to go ahead and complete the other formal parts of this meeting before we adjourn out to the?
Yes, so for the planning commissioners, we'll finish the agenda and adjourn the planning commission meeting. All the while, the mobility open house is starting right now in the foyer.
Oh, very good. Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda would be reports or comments from commission members. If none, reports or comments from the Community Development Director, Assistant Director, or Attorney?
Yes, thank you. I do have a very exciting item that I want to report out to the Planning Commission. So this past week, we posted 10 accessory dwelling unit plans, standard plans on the city's website for use by the public. And they range in size from a studio at 499 square feet, all the way through 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 1, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, up to 3 bedroom, 2 baths at 1,194 square feet. So we have 6 standard plans that we collaborated with the County of San Diego on and have a joint venture where people can use those. And then we created 4 additional accessory dwelling unit plans with Design Path Studios for a total of 10 that are posted and available for citizens in the city of Vista to use to build accessory dwelling units. So we're really excited about that, and I'm very grateful for staff's hard work on that.
Very nice. Thank you. Any other comments before we adjourn?
Chairman Green, go ahead. Commissioner De
Commissioner
Jesus.
De Jesus?
I had asked to speak a little bit for the last item too. I just wanted to say the overall look at this general plan update. I was part of an update 25 years ago in La Mesa, and it's amazing how far things have come and how much of a scope is involved. And I just want to say how great of a city we have with our staff and with consulting. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And the mobility part of it was so fascinating at the general plan update in District 4. that was out off of Melrose, or was it Melrose? Anyways, somebody was saying that was a resident of Shadow Ridge that they don't drive and they would love to go downtown and have dinner. They would love to be part of what's happening in the city center. And there's just not enough transportation to and from. So I saw that the purple line was there as well as a green line. So it's kind of nice to see you're listening, you hear us, and citizens need to speak up because this is the time to make the changes that you want to see. So I really admire that. And the other thing I'm going to say, Joe Vaca, is that I'm so excited about the ADU plans. Every property owner is now a developer and they can add an ADU to their property. And the fact that the city has created plans that will be, they're called permit ready, meaning that there are the floor plans and the structural engineering is already approved, is so helpful to the citizens. I work with them all the time, as you know. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Very good, thank you. I do believe we are adjourned.
Chairman
I
Graham.
think only 3.
I do, but I do have just wanted to mention, we do have a meeting on September 17th. So please put that on your calendar. It will be an early design review for that meeting. And just wanted to quickly remind all the commissioners that because the open house workshop is not part of this meeting, we cannot have more than 3 of you actually in the lobby area attending the open house so that we're in keeping with the Brown Act. So thank you very much.
Okay, we'll figure that one out. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for those that came tonight. Is there anybody that doesn't want to? You're not going to go, okay? No, okay. Yeah, well, we're not done. That's three. I don't know if 3 of us have to go or not. I don't think so. Good to see you. Yeah. Nice comments. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us would, but I'll be happy to stay. I don't know. You gonna stay? Hey, Rafi. Yeah, I've got a pen.
That's okay, is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Let me know if I missed anything. All right, how you doing? Verify your signature. I think that's right. You better check it. Okay.
Oh, it's okay. We'll get there.
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, God, right here. I'll let you fill in the date. Date, okay. All right. That's all right. You guys picked a long one to come to. Sometimes we get out 20 minutes, or sometimes an hour.
Thank you so much.
I'll let you date it.
Oh, yeah. Just trying to get our points done.
This is the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You're all set.
Thank you so much. You too.
Hi.
They're going to have a discussion and brief presentation out in the lobby if you want to.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing? Pretty good?
What were you thinking? Just want to know if there's more part of the meeting or?
Yeah, no.
I'll let you date it.
Sorry? Yeah, so what we did this for the planning commission that we brought that from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good?